Today on Ignorant Custom Garage, 2006 Ford Mustang. I'm going to be doing a brake job and swapping out the rotors for new rotors. What are we putting on? Brembos. Brembos on a 2006 Mustang. Fuck yeah. I basically did the passenger side. This is the driver's side. I've already done the passenger side. The reason I did that already and it's not on camera is because what you do on one side, it's a mirror image. It's the exact same thing. There's no point in showing you both sides of it being done when what you do to one you just do to the other. I had some issues on the other side with a seized anchor pin, so I came over to this side. I already loosened up some of the top bolts just because I wasn't sure if I was going to have the same kind of issues when I was going out to Napa to buy my stuff. I wanted to make sure if I needed one or two or not. So basically jack the car up, get her all off the ground. I'm using 2 stands. I have extra stands, so why not use more? Safety, I don't know. Yeah, so if you need a tutorial of how to jack up a car and take off a wheel, that's really up to you. I'm not going to show you guys how to do it. If you're doing a brake job, I think you should know how to jack up a car. So I'll try my best. Back here, this is the caliper. Brake pads sit here, and this is basically a caliper anchor. This is a rotor. You have on this Mustang here, and I've already loosened this, so if it's loose and you guys are thinking, holy crap, hopefully the camera's picking that up. That's a 12 mil bolt, and there's one more on the bottom. Just checking to see if this is picking this up properly or not, best as it can be. So like I said, I already loosened these, so these two should be fairly loose. Two 12 mil bolts. So now, in order to get the caliper off, the caliper is already kind of pushed in on itself. It might take a little bit of wiggle work to get it loose. It could be pretty tough. You have to figure it out, but it basically wiggles off. You want to inspect your caliper, check your rubber boots on the inside, and make sure that the boots aren't cracked or broken or anything else like that, because if they are, you'll need to replace those. And what I do, you can check certain vehicles, they need a caliper kit in order to get them down. I'll use basically just a pair of channel locks, and very slowly I'll squeeze that, and I'll basically reset the pistons back as far down as they can go. And again, on the other side, hopefully this is showing up on camera. Squeeze the piston down, and I do it nice and slow. There's no reason to rush this or push on it very hard or anything else like that, and just get those seated. Depending on where you go, some places they'll just let it hang. I never let this hang, because really at the end of the day it's a very small hose. It's a very small hose right here. That's your brake line right there. And on a car that's not modified or anything else like that, this little brake line here is just rubber. So some people, some shops, they'll just let the caliper hang. I just put a bungee cord off of the spring, and that way it's not just hanging on this little crevice here, or on this neck, because that's a metal part and this is obviously a rubber part. If you just let that hang, the metal's going to dig into the rubber. It's an older car. Bungee cords are pretty damn cheap, and I think a lot of people have them. Alright, so now we've got the pads. So again, for Christmas I'm getting a new camera mount, I promise. So this is both sides of the car up. There's no tires on either one, so you can use a lot of your own body force to rotate it. And the steering wheel inside of the car will rotate. One thing I forgot to mention is this is the brake reservoir here. I've got this cap off and it's loose. That way I'm not pushing against myself. So by having it loose but just leaving it on, so that way it's not like a locked system, it allows a lot of ease in pushing back those caliper pistons. All right, cool. So what am I doing here? Moving the brake pads. They should just pop out. These are retaining clips. Whenever you get a new brake set, usually you get brand new ones. Make sure you have brand new ones given to you or in the kit before you discard these, because you might sadly have to reuse them. So those two will come off. I don't necessarily have to pull them off because I'm pulling off this entire anchor, but okay. So then the third one just fell off, and the fourth one I just wiggled out there. So these are both pads. We've got some uneven wear. You might not be able to see it on camera now that the sun's there, but there's some uneven wear on that pad and some uneven wear there, which tells you that you might have an issue with your anchor pins not floating properly or not. And I do know that there is an issue with that for a fact. You can see the amount of wear, new caliper versus the old caliper. This car's got about 80,000 kilometers on it. I don't know when the last time or where the last brake job was done. But I do know that the pricks that did this before, they used bloody Loctite on the back of these anchor bolts. Pissed me off. So I've checked again, like I said, 2006 Mustang. The caliper anchor bolts at the back here are a 15 mil. And one thing to think about is when you're working on a car, you always remember your lefty loosey, righty tighty. When you get to the back of this thing, you might think, oh, well, this is the driver's side, this is passenger side. Is that left or is this left? And you get a little bit confused. As long as your tool is set up properly, meaning righty is a tighty, but lefty is my loosey, then basically it doesn't matter what side of the vehicle you're on. Your tool is right, it's going to be right. Yeah. Like I said, whoever was doing this job before I did, they used bloody Loctite. First bolt. And then just to show what I'm looking at here, this is your anchor. The top bolt there I was working on. You follow that down, there's my bottom bolt. Mama. Got all this stuff in the way here. Pricks. Let's put Loctite on this Mustang. Urgh. Dumbasses. There you go. Okay. How's that going to look on YouTube? Alright, so this bottom bolt here was absolutely horrible to get off. Now that it's loose, I should be able to get it off with just my fingers. And as you can see on the camera, Maybe you can't, I don't know. They use bloody fucking blue Loctite on this. There. So the caliper anchor basically comes off. It's rusty. It's pretty shitty condition. That's okay. What I'm going to do is, I've got a wire brush. I'm going to clean out basically there, which is where the new caliper brackets are going to sit on both sides, there and there. And I'm going to clean the face of the pins. And at the same time, you want to make sure that your pins are moving. They should come out with the hand, both sides, without any issue. If not, you've got a frozen pin. And the way to fix a frozen pin is basically to take a torch, a blowtorch to this, heat it up, and then you basically need a pair of channel locks to reef that thing out. Then you re-grease it and stick it back in, and then you don't have a frozen pin anymore. A frozen pin will basically cause you to have uneven wear on your brake pads. So I'm going to do that, and then to pull the rotor off, basically the only thing that keeps it on here is the caliper anchor. So give that a tap. Of course it doesn't want to work. So if you give it a tap and she doesn't want to work, it is what it is. Might have a frozen caliper now too. There you go, caliper's off. As you can see, there's a whole lot of oxidization around the rim of the rotor there. And there's a whole bunch all on here. So the camera's going to go off for a quick sec because I got to clean all this crap up. Alright, so I've got this cleaned up. To my standard anyways, as good as it's going to get for me doing a brake job for a friend. So on next is look at this guy. Is that the Brembo dude? He's like, hey, use my rotors. I don't know if he actually says that. Alright, hold on. There you go, brand new caliper. Real pretty. So basically, you line up the holes, and it slides on. Now it's going to be loose to start because there's really nothing holding it on there, right? So you just have to seat it as best as you can, and it's going to stick out a little bit up until you put on the caliper anchor. Alright, caliper anchor. I've cleaned this up as best as I possibly can. I know it still looks rusty and crap, but if I look at the insides there in comparison to what it was like, it's quite clean. These can be tricky when you're putting them on because you kind of wonder like, oh, how does this go? It's because the inside, this is the inside versus the outside. And I've cleaned the faces that are going to meet so that it should be as best as possible steel on steel for this brake job. And I tried my best to clean off as much of the stupid fucking Loctite. Okay, so is there a torque spec for these back bolts? What do you do? I've heard that when it comes to brakes, the tighter the better, blah blah blah. Lots of different things that I've heard over the years and people have told me over the years and things like that. As with anything, I go about a quarter turn, an eighth to a quarter turn past tight, and then that's it. That's what I do. So that's tight on the top and the bottom. And that's tight. There ain't nothing past that. So I'll swap back out to my 12 mil. So with the brakes, when you get a new kit, here you get new clips. There's a fourth. Sorry for anybody that's seasick. And you get this grease here. The grease actually goes on the bottom and on the inside of the clips, so that they don't squeak, basically, or essentially. So I find it's best to do it now. And the clips, when you put them on, the back's got a little, the back has a little clip there. So when you put that in, that goes in first, and then you clip the front down. So I'll show that hopefully a little bit better in a sec. So what I'll do is I'll grease the back of this a little bit, just like that. Now that it's all over my hand, and I only have one glove. And there's a little tang here, and on the Mustang, that little tab goes to the outside. So basically, you put the back in first, and then the top clips in, just kind of like that. And you can, if you choose, put a little on the inside, and that just basically helps it slide in and out. And the bottom clip, again, just a touch of grease. The back goes on first. Nope, too much shit in my hands. Doing it for the YouTube. And then that clips down. And again, you can just put a dab just to help it slide a little bit. So I'll do the same on the rears. This is the bottom. A little bit for the top, and that's in there. Now that I got grease all over my bloody gloves, I'll take these off. Fitting the pads on these is sometimes a little bit difficult, just because of the way that the caliper anchor sits. There's not an inside or an outside, it doesn't matter really. Some cars, they might not have that backing plate, they might not, they might have another one that you have to stick on yourself. This is already attached, so by it being already attached, there's no difference between front and back. So the channel here sits in the channel of the bracket, back, top and bottom. You just got to figure out how to get her in there. So I'm going to do the same with the back side. And the only thing that kind of makes these difficult is this little spring retainer that I guess keeps down the pressure on it so that the pads don't come loose. Flip this around. I guess if I had better camera skills, I could show you guys what I'm doing here, but it is what it is. So the brake pads are on. If you look at it from this side now, I don't know if that's even showing up. These springs are keeping the pads kind of pushed out a little bit so that you have a gap. But those pads are properly in and they are properly seated. Next, I wonder if my knee's been in this video the entire time. Next, you want to replace your caliper. If you haven't pushed these pistons back in, your caliper's not going to get on, because the old pads, the calipers have pushed out so far that they're a fraction of the size. So you have to ensure that you put those on. And I start with the back first, and then again, this is a little bit of a wiggle area to get it to fit. Main thing you have to make sure that you do is to clear your anchor retaining pins. Once the anchor retaining pins have been cleared, you just push them in. You'll get a little bit more wiggle room, and then it's on there. Your bolts then for the caliper bolts on the can go in. It just take a little bit to line them up right. Don't force them. Force them, that'd be fun. Don't force them. Because you don't want to have cross-threaded bolts. Oops. So again, same thing with these, quarter to an eighth, whatever you want to call it, pass tight. That's it. That's it. So there we have brand new Brembo rotor, brand new brakes. The only thing to do now is I use a little bit of anti-seize. You need a very, very little bit of this. Just dust. Alright, so I know I said that the last thing you're going to do, I put some anti-seize on there. The last thing you do is actually bleed the system. I know what I'm thinking in my head, I'm just not saying it out properly. So this is a dust boot cover that comes off of this. And I've already checked that out, and that's an 11 mil. Right here. So basically you're going to need a friend. They do have vacuum systems and different bleeding systems that you can use so that you can do it solo or just one person, or you just get a friend. And basically the way I do it is pump the brakes 5 times. I'm going to put the wrench on there. I'm going to loosen that, and brake fluid's going to come out, and then I'm going to do that about 15 times, I guess, on this side. Sorry, 15 brake pumps, so 3 times total on this side. I might switch over to the other side and then see how the brake feels. It doesn't take much for it to go, so you don't need to overdo it. And the only other thing you need to know is brake fluid strips paint like there's no tomorrow. So you don't want that stuff getting sprayed around at all. So you want to cover that off with a rag. So let me get this camera set up here. Good.